1. Hello, all, and welcome to Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have a very special guest, Peter McLean. Peter, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Nice to talk to you again, Daniel. It's always good
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
here.
yeah. So I'm really excited that you're here, Peter, because like I said, I remember specifically it was when my son, right before he was born, and my wife was pretty posted up, even months before. She just wasn't feeling good and stuff. So it was kind of a slow summer for me. So at one point, I had gone to a used bookstore near my mother-in-law's, and they had all these brand new indie books, and I found you, Michael R. Fletcher, and a couple other people.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna read book one, and I like literally flew through it on vacation, literally like within like a day and a half. My wife's like, oh, that was a really good book. I'm like, it really was a really good book. So I'm really excited to have you on today. Like I said, I just got done with book two, and I'm really raring to go for book three. Actually, it's like in my cart right now. So I really can't wait to talk to you today about your writing experiences, your characters, and particularly your newest book, Paid with Good Intentions. So thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me, as I say.
Yeah, no problem. So we'll start right in there with that first question there, Peter. One I always love to ask people, what's your writing journey been like really up to this point?
My writing journey's been chaotic and largely accidental, to be honest with you. And my first published novel that was with Angry Robot Books is a British urban fantasy called Drake that I wrote completely by accident. I honestly, this started with a stupid game on a web forum I used to be on, where they
Oh,
said,
cool.
write the best opening line of a book you haven't written. And I came up with, he saw my warp stone and raised me an angel skull, and I know there was no way I could cover that bet. And that is still the first line of the book.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
I thought, yeah, you know what, I like this. I could do something with this. And I turned it into a short story that was published in some micro press anthology that's long since stopped being available. And I thought,
Yeah.
I like this story. And I just chopped the end off it because it was a bit violently, it just stopped. Do you know what I mean? I thought, I
Yeah,
can do
yeah.
better than this. And I turned it into a novel. Angry Robot, I don't know if they still do it, but I'm talking about 10 years ago. They used to do an annual open door thing
Oh, yeah, yeah,
where
yeah.
they'd take unagented submissions. And I sent it to them and forgot all about it. And then they went bust and got bought out by somebody else, and the entire management team changed, and I'd given it up for
Mm.
dead. And then about 6 months after that, some random guy I'd never heard of phoned me up and said, "Can we see the rest of it?" I was like, "Oh, hell yes, you can." Send
Yeah.
him that. And then I promptly forgot about it again. And then 6 months later, this same guy phoned me up, Phil Jordan, I think his name was. He was their editor then. He phoned me up again and said, "You know what? We'd like to publish this." And I was like, "Really? Thank you very much." So we did that, and I did another two books with them. It was supposed to be a 5 book series, but I had overly optimistic baby author syndrome in those days. I thought, well, if they bought one, they're going to buy all of them. Happy days, and they don't work like that. So they published 3 of them, and then said, "You know what? Actually, book 3 sold like ass. We don't want the rest of them." So, oh, okay. So that was the Birdman series, which I am very apologetic to all my readers, did stop on a literal cliffhanger and is not ever likely to start again. But by then, I'd realised urban fantasy isn't really what I want to write
Mm.
because I don't read it, to be honest. Like I say,
Okay.
my only experience to reading urban fantasy is I used to love the Hellblazer comic books and
Oh,
Swamp Thing,
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And my character, John Drake, is very much a drunken, nastier John Constantine. So that's where I was going with that. But I don't read the genre, and my two loves are what I call swords and horses fantasy.
Mm.
George Martin, Tolkien, proper fantasy stuff. And I love gangster movies. Absolutely, like, always have done, and books. I mean, I've read Mario Puzo's The Godfather so
Mm.
many times. I just love it, and I've like Goodfellas and Casino and all this stuff. I thought And I read a Joe Abercrombie book. I think it might be Before the Hanged. I can't remember. No, it must be Best Served Cold. It's the one with Shank the Immortal Assassin in it.
Okay, I think
And
that's right.
he breaks into a fantasy opium den, and there's this fantasy gangster sitting there behind the table. And before Shank just murders the lot of them, because of course he does. I thought I want to write about that guy, and I don't mean the assassin. I meant the gangster. So I did. I smashed together Swords and Horses fantasies and my love of gangster movies, and ended up with Priest of Bones. And it kind of went from there. I mean, it turns. You're only at the end of book 2, so you're not quite there yet. But it goes from being gangster family saga much more into a political thriller kind of thing. But I mean, I've always said that the gangster family arc only ends one of 3 ways.
Yeah.
He gets gunned down, or he turns snitch, or he goes into politics. Thomas Part, he goes into politics. So I won't spoil the last 2 for you, but that's kind of where it's going.
And I have to say, like my friend, when when I said, like, oh, I flew through book 1, and that's what he said. He's like, yeah, because I was pretty late to the party. I feel like, because I was like, I really want to read in paperback before my son is born, and thank goodness I did that, because now every time I have a paper, he's getting better now. But usually when I have a paperback in my hands, he's like wants to play with it or wants me to put it down or something. So it's a lot easier to read on Kindle. But I don't know. There's just something about your books and your tone where I really enjoy. Maybe it is because it's reminding me, of certain things that I read or watched, like growing up or whatever, that like that's like my grandfather loved the gangster movies. So
Yeah.
he was one of the first ones I watched The Godfather with, edited, of course. But yeah, like even like Ocean's 11, like the original one, um the score, like those kind of things. So I don't know, like I really enjoy just reading them. But they flow so well. And when I went through book 1, my friend's like, "Oh, I gotta warn you, like it switches a little bit," because he knows I'm a rogue person. I love rogues, thieves, assassins, like whatever, and it's just my jam from D&D and other stuff. But I was like very surprised though, when I feel like you're making that gradual change, for book 2, but it really, I don't know, like other people have kind of switched flavors, or whatever you want to say, or just, started to go a certain way, but it really didn't feel like you were pull it out of left field or whatever. It felt like it made total sense, particularly by the end. I won't spoil anything for anybody, but I don't know. I was like super, super happy by the end. And I was like really excited to get to book 3. I have way too many books on my reading list right now that I'm like trying to get through for the podcast.
Yeah.
But yours I like put in there, and I wasn't really supposed to. It was like I always need those reads, where I just know I'm gonna enjoy them and they're gonna keep me reading, those palate cleansers. So, but I don't know, I really enjoyed what you did at the end of book 2. And I love book 1 with the gangster stuff, but I mean like Peaky Blinders, stuff like that in a fantasy setting, loved it. But I really enjoyed getting more of the politics and the greater world in there. And I like to see Thomas like kind of changing gears there, and really having to use his skills in different ways
Yeah.
than maybe he thought before. So that was interesting.
The fish out of water thing.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Thomas lives on his reputation in Ellenberg. And when he goes to Dansburg, no one's heard of him. He doesn't have a reputation. He's got to find other ways to get stuff done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can do that.
Well, it's interesting too, having a few crew members.
Sorry, man. Say that again.
I was just saying it was interesting you had the like different crew members, like, and like, not as many. So yeah, like you don't have all your weapons there, like that kind of thing.
Exactly that. But he's got Anne. That's the important thing. Well, no, actually, he hasn't in book 2. In book 3, he's got Anne with him.
Oh, okay.
She is his right hand. She's his conscience, his chief enforcer. She's his best friend. She's very, very important to Thomas. And I made a real point of the fact that there is nothing romantic between them whatsoever.
Yeah.
She's a war comrade and his best mate, and that is it. He's got his wife, sort of. she's got her partner, and there's nothing romantic between Anne and Thomas, and there never will be. But they just bounce off each other so well.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
the dynamic that you have between the two. And she honestly, like, I love Thomas, but like she's my favorite character so
She's
far
mine
between book
too.
one and two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote Anne deliberately to be the best mate I wish I had.
Yeah,
Do
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
That's
Yeah,
awesome. I do.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And so we talked about genre, so we're gonna move on there. But wanted to have you on for a while, so I appreciate you being flexible. Have a little guy, so it's always hard.
yeah.
So, but I really appreciate you coming on today. So this is like one of my favorite questions to ask people, about their books in particular. So what is, for our audience, maybe haven't read your books yet, what is your War of the Rose Throne about, and how'd you come up with this idea?
Well, I kind of told you how I came up with it. It was wanting to mash swords and horses fantasy together with gangster stuff, but it's ultimately about the legacy of war and what it does to people. I mean, I know Tolkien obviously fought in the Great War. He knew PTSD. He knew what war did to people, and you can see that in the end of Lord of the Rings with the scouring of the Shire. But and I think Moorcock kind of got it. Most of his heroes are pretty messed up.
Yeah.
But there was a point in the fluffy sparkle pony fantasy period of the late 70s through the 80s where it just got forgotten. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not
Yeah.
blaming the author specifically, but the heroes go fight this epic quest or massive battle and win and go home and live happily ever after. And that don't work like that. War
Yeah.
messes people up. And I wanted to start this story at kind of the end of most fantasy books where the war's over and they
Yeah.
have been told they won. It might not really feel like it when they've come home to no jobs, no food, and the plague, but technically they won. But they're all so broken and so messed up. And I wanted to reflect that because that is how tragically our real veterans come home from war.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think we should walk past that, man. You know what I mean? I wanted
Yeah.
to acknowledge that. And I've got a lot of friends who are either former or serving military, and I've had a lot of slightly sometimes difficult conversations with a lot of people I respect a lot. And I've been told I got it right. I've had veterans I don't know ask me where I served because they assume I must have done, which I put hand on heart, I haven't. But that means so much to me that I must have got it right to at least a certain extent.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a big part of what drove me to write it. But I mean, other than that, I'm an entertainer, dude. I want to entertain people. You know what I mean? I want to tell a good story. I want to keep people turning the pages. Obviously, I want to keep them buying the next one because I've got to eat too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just how it is. But yeah, I wanted it to be entertainment, but not without heart. And at its heart, that's what it's about. And it's kind of a two-pronged thing. The other thing is the old adage: power corrupts.
Mm.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And as you follow Thomas's arc, he still does good things, but Thomas very much believes in an ends justify the means policy. And I
Yeah.
want to show that that can lead to some very questionable means. So, yeah, you've got 2 books left to go, and I don't want to spoil them for you, but read on, my dude.
Well, I have to because, like you were saying, I'll be honest, yeah, like so I have a prequel novella like trilogy for my Monster Hunter. He's a Marine before that, and he's actually in the Marines when he encounters the supernatural, and then it's how
Uh-huh.
really like his arc. So, and I've been working on this actually almost. It was like must have been right before I read Priest of Lies, so it's a couple years now. So, and like I when I had read book one, I was like, dang, like this is like exactly how I want my second prequel novella to feel.
Mhm.
Particular when like he's a Marine, but he's not going to be. So we get to figure out how that happens. But there was a lot of the just like the emotion or the heart, as you had said, with being a veteran. I was just like, I felt like he totally nailed it. And based off of, conversations I've had with family members and a lot of friends, who have served currently, or like you said, who are veterans, not in the military now. I mean, I feel like you really nailed it. And just that like feeling, I'm not gonna say anybody's names, but some authors in the community who are veterans who, have told me like privately, like, I at times I feel like I did good, and other times I feel like I was kind of just used up and, thrown away, and now I'm
Yeah,
not really, like what did I really
yeah,
do? And there's all these questions, and I just felt like you had really laid out a lot of the questions, particularly, in the first two books, particularly in book one, where it really made me think, a lot deeper about these things and these conversations I had with a lot of different people over the years. So I feel like that part, like you really, really nailed. And it's interesting because it really makes you ask a lot of questions, I feel like personally. So, but it made me think a lot, in terms of, people that I've known and stuff. So I thought that was
yeah,
like really
yeah. No,
super
it's
cool.
good. That's what I want. I want people to think. Yeah. They've not
Well,
necessarily got to like it. They haven't necessarily got to like me. But if they think, I've won. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you really got me thinking about like I teach social studies, so like I teach government, I teach political science, and you really had me thinking like, particularly with book one and two, like with different organizations, not just the United States, but around the world over time, who maybe had been painted with a negative light or they had some negative things, but they did do good. And I'm like, well, did they do more good than the governments they had at those times? And it ended up, really making me think a lot deeper, about a few different groups, that I normally teach, or even just like currently in society, and like how, like you were saying, like Thomas does do good, and I
yeah,
mean, he is right, like ends justify the means kind of guy, but I won't spoil anything, but there's a couple of people that I love that I do love that, there's a little bit of like Jack Reacher mentality, right? That like you you tried to kill me, you tried to harm an innocent, like I'm just gonna F you up now, like and but you see how it takes a toll on him, and I'd say with his character in particular.
absolutely.
So yeah, I
Yeah,
thought that was
that
a really
character on the
interesting
gang
thing.
up series. I mean, careful of spoilers, but Thomas is falling to bits by book four. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean? F around and find out, but it
Yeah,
it takes its toll on him. There's only so much one man can take on. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you start to see
again,
the
trying
rope
to show
fraying.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you gotta start to see that rope
totally.
fraying, and just with like even like him and Anne, like even like um at times even in book two, it's still connected, but you still see he's starting to fray a little bit. So I just thought that you nailed it in terms of going from book one to book two, the pacing and everything, not just with the overarching story or each arc in the books themselves, but just like you can really tell. Like my friend was like book four, like he hits the fan, and the rope
Yeah,
like
basically.
frays, it just shatters, like it just snaps. So, but I felt like, I'm like, oh, I got two more books to go. I'm thinking like it just felt very, very natural in terms of pace. So
Good.
I was really
That's what
impressed
I
by
was
that.
going for. I mean, War for the Rose Throne is the four books. The new one is not part of the War for the Rose Throne series. It's a standalone set in that world, but it's not part of that series. The four War for the Rose Throne books are one long novel, split up into four bits. Otherwise, it'd have been a foot thick and nobody would have published it. But it is all one story. And I'll say the new one is something adjacent but different, but in the same setting with largely different people. But the first four is one contiguous story. It was always designed to be. I always plotted it out that way. So yeah, hopefully it does flow one book into the
Yeah.
next in a natural way.
Well, I have to say though, Peter, like there's so many people, that I know that have either have read them or just got done. And and like that's got to be one of the most common things I've heard from people is not only did you nail the veteran aspect or the wounds of war, so to speak, but collectively I remember I talked to like really talks about the pacing was just so well done, particularly for four books. Like I've seen a lot of people do a really good job with 3 or 5, but to me, doing the 4 is really hard. I think,
Well,
for a lot of people,
oh,
because it's like you're like,
there's a story behind that.
okay,
This was supposed to be a trilogy,
mm,
and it was supposed to go Lies, Bones, Crowns. And I started writing what was going to be Crowns, and I outlined a lot. I had a 15-page outline, and I was in about 50,000 words into my draft, and I was on page 2. I
oh
was
wow.
like, dude, this is not working. Bit of a come to Jesus call with my Asian and editor. Like, we need another book. When my editor was still the absolutely wonderful Joe Fletcher at Joe Fletcher Books, and she was like, she hummed and hawed for a minute, and she was like, "Yes, I agree. You need another book. Come up for a name with this one." And I was like, "Oh, Bristol Gallows," and I started hanging people just to make the title work. Oh, it would never have all fitted in one book of any sort of sensible length. So, yeah, it's a quartet that was supposed to be a trilogy and kind of. I'm like, it's my writing. All my writing grows arms and legs. When I draft, I draft really lean. I mean, I will turn in a novel at about 80,000 words, and by the time I've turned around developmental ed, it's 120. Do you know what I mean?
Wow, that's funny.
But even at draft stage, I thought, no, this thing is growing limbs at an alarming rate. This is not going to work. You know.
I know that feeling. I had a short story, and then I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a small novella." I was like, "Oh," that got a little
Uh,
bigger. I was like, "Okay," and then all of a sudden it turned into like a 85,000 word book, and then I'm like, "Oh, it really doesn't make sense to start like to end the arc as a standalone," and then the characters were like, "Oh, we're actually going to do these things," and now I'm like, I had to completely reconfigure. I had somebody ask me the other day, they're like, when's this like heist book coming out? I'm like, dude, I was like, those characters decided they were just gonna like completely change, and they changed the country on me, changed the world building. Like I had a particular theme that was the same, but like literally it's like a whole, you know how it is, it's like a whole different book.
yeah.
So I think my friend, I was telling him all these changes and stuff, and my best friend goes, and he's very critical. I like love him. He's that guy. I'll hand him something and be like, this is crap, and then he gets good feedback. But if it's really good, I know it's really good. He's read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, and then I know, he's like, oh, that's really good. Oh, that's even better. I'm like, all right, well, I know I'm on the right track, because he's not exactly picky, but he'll tell me how it is. So, but I still think
What
it's
you want,
impressive. So
what you can't overvalue honest feedback. I mean,
exactly,
somebody patting you on the head and saying, "Well done, dear," is no help to anyone. It's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I do think I get the whole growing limbs thing because it happens to me every time. Because then I had a short story, and then I was gonna have it for an anthology, and all of a sudden I had a young priestess who like just is like an acolyte, and then this goddess is basically gonna like be killed, quote unquote, but not really, and her soul gets absorbed into her priestess, and then all of a sudden the two of them have to like figure out how to like avoid getting killed by all the rest of the gods and like their acolytes and everything. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And then I came up with like a really interesting magic system. So I was like, oh, this might have to be like a couple novellas or something. My friend, he's like, dude, my other friend, he's like, you got to stop like growing limbs with these stories. They grow legs and just start to walk. I'm like, they never do what I tell them to do, but I totally get that. But I still think it's impressive that you're able to, right, like where you said, like, get to that point, where you're like, oh, I need to, make 2 books here, because I think that's really smart. Because some people, right, don't decide that, and they completely reconfigure, and then they really like ruin, I would say, a really good ending, right? Because some people are like, I'm gonna make it 150,000 words, I'm gonna make it whatever, instead of really, I think, making it 2 separate ones. I love the more books personally. I'm like, the more books, the more fun. So. But sometimes, right, like people need 3 instead of 4. But I do think it's interesting just to listen to that gut. So
You've got to take a business nuance look at this. The more books there are in a series, the fewer you sell.
that's true too. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it's a trilogy, people that buy book one will buy and like it, buy book two. People who buy book two and like it will buy book three. People who don't like book two don't buy book three. By the time you get to book five, the number of people who don't buy the next one, it's a descending curve. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
the days of the 80s Wheel of Time 12 book epic monolith saga, it's gone.
yeah,
Publishers don't buy that anymore. They don't buy it because they know the longer it is, the more drop off there's going to be.
yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, that's why my new one's a standalone. And there's,
Oh, smart.
I don't know if you want to talk about contractual stuff or not, but
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Feel free, Peter. Go right ahead. Yeah,
yeah, well, another reason I'm writing standalones now is there is this ghastly concept called basket accounting, which didn't used to be a thing but is now. And I have managed to avoid it throughout my career so far. It's like I have sold a book at a time. And when each book has earned out its advance, I get royalties. Happy days, which I do on all but the newest one, obviously, because it's not out yet. But, you know, with basket accounting, if you sell a trilogy, you don't get royalties on book one until book three has earned out.
Mm.
And with that series drop off I was just telling you about, nah. You have to basically take the view the advance is all you're going to get. And I'm sorry, that don't work for me. That really, really don't.
Yeah, yeah,
So no, I just sold this one as a standalone, and once it's earned out, payday. You know.
yeah,
But if
yeah,
I sold it, I mean, it's quite different. I mean, I'm proud of it. I like it, but I'll be honest, I've no idea if it's got to sell. And if I'd sold three of them and the first one don't sell, well, I'm not seeing another penny. I'm not signing up for that.
yeah, yeah.
You've got to have a bit of business nous about it to do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's like I had a couple people ask me a few things. I'm like, I'm looking at market shifts and stuff and how, how long some things are taking me. And I'm like, I know a few things that I had that started and, it took me a while to get going and stuff. So I kind of pushed it to the side. I'm like, I know the wheel will come back around. I'm like, right now is not the best time, I mean, that's what it is, right? You have limited time, limited resources. The market's a lot harder than it used to be. You got to be, yeah, right. You got to be really intentional, right? So that's where I'm like, I have a few things where I'm like, I'm doing this now, and then, I'm going to do these other things later. Like I have them, and either I modify them or, or the wheel turns again. That's like, I don't know. I felt like werewolves were out for a while, then they were back in again for urban fantasy. Like, vampires were in, they were out. Now they're kind of slowly coming back again the last couple years, right? Like, it's like you gotta, there's just only so much time in the day. So I definitely agree with that. I think you gotta definitely, look at, be really succinct at, like what's going on and be really intentional, particularly when, you're talking about, contracts and stuff like that. So, and that's like, I've seen, without saying anything, for particular authors, they'll talk to me on here, then they'll talk to me privately. And, and I feel like the market's changed a lot, even before the pandemic, especially after the pandemic. So, a lot of companies do things a lot differently than they used to. And there was some people I interviewed, was like, oh, I thought I made it. And then, my book didn't get as much advertising and stuff, right? With one of the big three. And, they're asking me, right, to come back and do things. And I'm like trying to help them as much as possible. But they're like, well, you've done more for me than, the company has. I'm like, that's kind of wild, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, unless you're.
Kind of how it is. Everybody thinks they've made it when they sign that contract. And my dude, you've not. You have not. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Well, it's also like with people too, with like Kindle or whatever digital copy, right? And like I got my first thing coming out next year, and I got bumped back and stuff, got covers and stuff, and like life got in the way. I need to do another draft. Got an amazing editor, so I listen to her because she's smarter than I am. So thank you, Sarah Torn. She gave me like the amount I had somebody first edit it, and they took my money and just didn't really do anything. And I was like in a bind, and I was trying to get it out quicker. So I was like, "Do you know anybody?" And she was like, "What happened?" So I told her, and she helped me out. But then it was like a master class at developmental editing and writing, and I've just been learning ever since. And I'm like
Yeah,
getting
no,
close to
it's
being done.
really, really good. Highly
Yeah.
recommended. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I had somebody ask me, they're like, well, I thought you wanted to be done this summer. I'm like, and out. I'm like, well, you got to think about marketing too, right? I'm like, I want a new cover. I got Tom Edwards. By now, when this episode publishes, I'll have the contract from him.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited about that. I love his work. So, but it's like I try to tell people like I'm patient. Like I'm independently published. I'm like I'm doing things very. That's why I wanted a different cover. I'm just gonna use the original ones. I didn't really spend a lot. My friend did an awesome job. I'm using them as book advertisements and stuff, or posters, giveaway stuff. But I feel like I tell people I'm like it's gonna be my first thing I publish. I gotta make sure it's really good, in my opinion. And there's a lot of things where like if I go to a lot of shows in person. I'm lucky here in Central New York where I'm at. They're very cheap, but like there's a lot of good content there. You get a lot of foot traffic. So my main goal is I know I'm probably going to sell so many, right,
Mhm.
online or whatever. So my goal is to go wide, and then I've talked to a lot of bookstores around here. So I have like 8 independent bookstores. So I am just going to be in the bookstores, and then I'm going to do signings. I'm going to kind of go and do like a rotational thing with them. But I think a lot of people, they think again that, oh, my book's out. It's just going to be, out there. I know like 300 people that, have just published their, a couple books, and, it's just kind of out there in the void. That's why I was like, well, if I'm going next January, because I'll be in that dry spot. So I'm gonna be really intentional. Everybody's gonna have those gift cards. That gives me plenty of time to wrap up on the second and third one this summer, and I'll have everything set. I'll be able to, be really intentional with like a really good launch and everything. But yeah, I've talked to a lot of people about that. I know a lot of people that just like throw their book up there, independently published, and they just
Yeah.
kind of leave it in the wind. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm like the money and the time and everything. I'm like, I like to be a little bit more intentional, but. Um, Contractual stuff I think is always really good to know because again, I don't think a lot of people know those things, and a lot of people don't talk
No,
about them. So
it's a thing really only trade published authors know, and then only if they've got a good agent who'll actually talk them through how shit works. But
yeah.
I do, well, not quite contract law in my day job, but
Hmm.
something
Okay.
adjacent. And so, yeah, I mean, I went into this knowing how to read a contract, knowing where the double
Okay.
speak is in a clause and all that kind. I mean, I've taught lectures on this, how to navigate the business as a businessman, not as a creative. And
Yeah.
I think, however good your agent is, you've got to be able to have a bit of business savvy about you. Or yeah, they're going to grind you under the wheels. I mean, yes, publishing's a team sport. Yes, you should have a good relationship with your editor, but at the end of the day, they are billion-dollar corporate businesses,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your interests are not forefront on their P&L sheet. Let's be honest, they're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
not. So
Yeah.
you got to be able to fight your corner.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
So
obviously, I've got a fantastic agent, Jenny Golliboy at DMLA in New York, and she's brilliant, and nothing and nobody gets past her. She's really sharp, but
that's
it's in
awesome.
my interests as well to be able to at least understand the basics. So,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
obviously she's a busy lady, she don't just work for me. I've got
Yeah.
to know what smells bad that I've got to bring to her attention and go, "Oi, Jenny, sort that." And she'll read it and go, "Ew, yeah, you're right. I'll sort that." And
Yeah. Yeah.
week later, it's done. But does she have the time to meticulously read every line and every clause of, I don't know how many clients she's got, 40,
Yeah.
50,
Yeah.
all those contracts? No, of course she hasn't. No one has.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's in my best interest to know what, at least rudimentarily know what I'm looking at, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, like I said, I got to talk to some people, and I had a couple people last year in particular where that's what happened to them. They had a great agent, but then, something just snuck by or, and they end up getting screwed over, in a few different areas. So I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah,
Um,
it happens. It happens. I mean,
yeah.
you got to understand business is business, and this is big corporate business.
Yeah.
Stuff happens. Sometimes the wheels fall off. It's just life, man. You got to
Yep.
recover from it, work around it, adapt, and move on. It's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep,
Yeah.
that's so true. That's at my job too. Like we had like a contractually, like there was a thing, and I was like it changed all of a sudden. I was like, wait a minute, and they're like, they told me the addendum, and I'm like, nobody's told me this addendum before. So then I had to get my old summer job
Oh,
back. I had to pick up a different thing. And everybody's looking at me like, no, you're fine. You've been working really hard. I'm like, they don't understand though, right? Like bills, emergencies, things pop up. But every time I've spent my emergency money, that's my independent published money. So
yeah.
I'm like,
That's
no,
when
no,
an
no, but I,
emergency happens.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, yep. I'm like, really, that's my
Guarantee it.
private business money. I'm like, so no, I was like, I have to like be flexible and find something else to get back to this point. I'm like, they're thinking
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just paying these bills. I'm like, no, I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, you always got to be flexible there. But do you mind? Let's talk a little bit more about, a little bit more in depth, about Paid with Good Intentions, and really
Yeah.
like what readers can expect, because I'm really excited about this standalone, I have to say. So,
It's not first person. It's close limited third person because I have a woman protagonist, and I do not want to attempt to write a woman in first person. You get those hashtag men writing women
yeah,
shticks
yeah,
on social. Yeah, yeah, I'm not falling for that.
that's
So
fair.
it's written in third person, but my wife is my first beta reader, and my agent and my editor are both women. Actually, both my editors are women, so I don't think I've screwed the poocher with that.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's in the same world. It's set couple of years. I'm a bit vague about that. After Priest of Crowns finishes, in the same world, you do not have to have read the first four, but if you do, there are some familiar faces and Easter eggs. Um, it's more of a spy thriller than anything else.
Awesome.
So I lean my main character Aline starts out as impoverished commoner's muck, abused housewife of a broken down military veteran who beats her up and treats her terribly. And we open with the scene of her finally snapping and killing him, and good for
Right.
her.
Yeah,
She is recruited by the Queen's men because obviously she's arrested by the guard for murder. But the Queen's man in the city examines the murder scene and says, no defense wounds. Oh, that was good work. Well, I need to talk to this lady. And yeah, basically she's recruited into the Queen's men are kind of a cross between CIA Black Ops and the Gestapo. She's recruited with a view to becoming a government-sanctioned assassin,
yeah.
but the target, the Queen's man, and I won't name him because it'll spoil it for you. The target the Queen's man has his eyes on is the madame of a brothel. So Elaine finds herself recruited to be a prostitute until she can get close enough to the madame to knife her. But the madame sees potential in Elaine and trains her to be a courtesan. And I don't know if you know anything about the history of the Venetian courtesans. These
Oh,
women
very
had
little, yeah.
immense political power and contacts, and very, very rarely had to sleep with anybody, but did an awful lot of throat slitting rather, and vote manipulation and general power plays. And Madame trains her to be a courtesan, and she meets a baron who is her first paying client, who is not who he says he is. And he has a mission for her completely off the books and behind the Queen's men's back. And then we go full John le Carre spy thriller assassination stuff. I can't really tell you much more than that, but it's more that kind of thing. And her best mate from the brothel turns out to be a cunning woman, same as Billy the Boy is
Cool.
in Rose Throne, although she doesn't know she is, and she meets a man you might remember, and learns to come into her magical powers and becomes Elaine's sidekick and best mate and a very powerful asset in battle. And yeah, it kind of goes from there, but yeah.
That's
It's
cool.
like, I say, it's a very different kind of thing, but it's in the same world, and there are faces you'll know, and yeah.
That's cool.
The thing, have I got away with writing from a woman's point of view? I hope so. I can't put hand on heart and know so until the
Yeah,
reviews start coming in. But
yeah,
hey, it's gone through 3 layers of very strong women to reach publication, so I'm thinking probably yes. But
yeah. No, I feel like that's fair. My first one of my friends when I first handed somebody one of my manuscripts, she goes, "Your female characters suck." This was like probably
oh,
10 years ago. And I was like, "Really?" And then she goes, "Can you read it again?" I read it again. I was like, "God, these are horrible." So I've been working a long time.
oh
So I
mate,
totally get
yeah.
that. Yeah. I was like, "She's
It's
right."
not
I'm like,
the
"They're
it's
horrible."
not the easiest thing to do, but I've found
Yeah.
once you remember women are not a different species, people are people. As long
Yeah,
as
yeah,
you don't get anything daft wrong, why would it be different? You know?
yeah. Well, I told her
I've
like,
been married over 30 years. I'm quite well accustomed to
yeah,
I'm married to one.
yeah. Well, I told her I was like, she was like, well, she told me she's like, well, you really love Elaine Cunningham's like, characters, right? Particularly the female protagonists and the
Uh,
heroes and stuff for Forgotten Realms. I was like, yeah. She goes, this is nothing like that. And she was totally right. Like I had written them like their secondary characters. I'm like, oh, I'm a guy and not good at it. So yeah, definitely, I get that. It definitely took a long time. A lot better now. It's probably not perfect still, but
yeah.
a lot better now. But it is definitely not an easy thing to do. I had a friend, a female author friend asked me recently. She's like, can you check this? Like, because I was telling her there's a series that I really enjoy and I really enjoyed the books, but I cannot stand how the author like created or like how they did the female characters. There's one in particular where it's like and they're like younger and stuff, and I'm just like I work with teenagers and I'm like this
Mm,
is not I'm like they're dumb at times. I was like this is not how this like a female teenager would behave. And it really like those chapters like really pulled me out at times. And the rest of the books were really good, but that character ended up kind of being like a secondary character after a while, so I didn't really have to see that mistake as much. But yeah, it was definitely there and it was apparent. It's still great books,
mm.
but I hope that they have fixed that by now because I think they
Yeah,
have more
I
coming
mean,
up. But yeah.
I'm lucky with that. I mean, my grandson's 14, my granddaughter's 12, coming up on 13. So I've kind of, I mean, not so much as you as a school teacher, obviously, but I've got first-hand experience at least of how two kids that age are, if
Yeah,
nothing
yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah. Yep, that's fair. That's fair. So, you talked a little bit, about some of these differences, in terms of story, but, in terms of, characters, like how is her character different than Thomas's? And like kind of what were you going for, in terms of
Wow,
those differences?
she's a driven woman. She's a widow by her own hand and a mother of two recently grown children. So you have
Mm,
to remember the age of majority in this world is 13. So her son's already in the army and her
mm,
daughter's gone off into service to be some lady's maid, but she doesn't know where yet.
mm.
But the Queen's man in the city, because remember the Queen's men know absolutely everything,
Yeah.
knows absolutely where they are. He says,
Yeah.
your son's a man grown now, signed up in the army like a good lad should be. He's in basic training right now. Dangerous, that is. Can be.
Mm,
A lot of lads have accidents in basic.
mm.
Fatal ones. And I mean, the threat, the Queen's men are not subtle. The threat is
Yeah, yeah.
so heavy handed. And it's the same with her daughter as a maid. She says, she's serving lady, I won't tell you. And she says, actually, she is a good employer. Except for one thing. You don't steal from her. No, you don't do that. If one piece of jewelry was found in a maid's garret, and so on and so forth. So he's literally holding her children's lives over her. And she's absolutely driven. And she's, small spoiler because you don't find out till quite a way into the book, but she's a traveller stock.
Mm,
And her deceased mother drummed it into her that prostitution was the worst thing a woman could do. It'd damn your soul in the eyes of the gods. But she realizes that or she dies or her children die or both. So she goes against her mother's wishes. She does it. And she comes to the realization it's the lesser of two evils, which is, you know from the first two you've read, that's one of my enduring themes. You've got to weigh two
Yeah,
evils in your hand and choose the lighter one.
yeah, yeah.
McLean is on the same page as Thomas with that, if nothing else. I mean,
Interesting.
she's not as much of a political animal than he is, and she's not as physically brutal as he is, but she's probably crueler in a way in the pursuit of what she thinks is right. There is a scene in the book where she does something even she didn't think she'd do because it needs doing. And her handler is aghast, basically,
Wow.
that she did what she did. But I'll let you find that out by yourself. I don't want to spoil the book for anybody.
Well, I say, driven, that makes sense, especially if you bring someone's kids into it. You know, I can't.
Yeah, well, quite. This is it. She is the archetypical mama bear. She will do anything to save her cubs. And yeah, she really does.
Interesting. I'm really excited to get into that book. I'm actually really excited that's a standalone because now I can just kind of start right after book 4 and just like go right in, do some compare contrast. All right.
As you're reading Rose Throne, I'd finish that before you pick up the new one.
Cool.
I'd say you could read the new one without having read any of the first 4, but if you'd started them, I'd say finish them before you pick up the new one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my friend warned me. He goes, if you're gonna get the paperback for Priest of Galaxy, he's like, you might as well just get the paperback for both. Because he's like, you're just gonna fly through. I was like, that's fair. So, yeah, that's gonna be my vacation read in between school and summer school. So I'm excited there. But I have to add this one, paying intentions to my summer list. But who do you think was the most challenging character you have ever written so far, and why?
Oh, I think it's probably a line just because, as we talked about, I mean, I'm nearly 53 and I'm a white dude and I'm trying to write a 35-year-old gypsy woman. You know, it's so far outside my experience that
Yeah.
I just so wanted to get it right. Do you know what I mean?
I do. That's why I'm
I
on
am so
5 right
scared
now.
it's like when I was doing Rose Throne with the whole PTSD veterans thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to disrespect anybody, and I want to honour what people have been through and their lived experiences that aren't my lived experiences. And you got to research the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And the other one, I don't know, did you ever read my Burn Man books?
No, I actually just added them to my Goodreads list, or my Kindle list, actually.
Well, like I say, the series dies after book 3, so you're not going to get a happy conclusion, unfortunately. But they're urban fantasy. There's a lot of magic in sort of modern day London. And Don Drake's magic is classical Hermetic Goetia, which I do actually know about. So that wasn't too difficult. But I folded, there's a character in it called Papa Ramon, who's a Haitian voodoo Hungan.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's a real thing. I had to research that hell out of
I bet, yeah.
Because again, if I'm going to do it, I ain't doing it wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've got some very interesting books on one of my shelves about this kind of thing. It's like, if I'm going to do it, and I knew I wanted to, but I've got to know it. So, yeah. But other than that, I mean, most of my characters just turn up. I mean, there's a guy in Gallows. There's a chap you'll meet in Priest of Gallows who goes by the name of Beast. And he was supposed to be scenery. He was a walk-on character. I had this set-piece scene mapped out, and I needed a couple of speaking parts. You know, that sort of walking scenery type character.
Yeah.
He's on for maybe a page or two, says something or other, and you just zoom again. But this guy, he just rocked up in my head with a full personality, a full backstory. He just said, I can do that. Gives a job. And he's in the next 2 books.
Oh, that's awesome.
Go right you out. You're great.
Yeah, that's super cool.
My characters just do that sometimes. They just arrive. I mean, Thomas was a bit like that. I've no idea where he came from.
Mm.
I mean, he's a bit Michael Corleone, a bit Tommy Shelby, probably a bit me, but he just turned up absolutely fully formed with a
Oh, wow.
full story, which, as you know, isn't terribly nice, but it was already there when he turned up, and I just knew who he was, where he'd come from, what he was going to do, and I was like, all right, nice, you'll do.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's super cool.
nuts, man. Oh, man. People live in my head.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a character. She's like, I'm not the same thing. She's like, oh, well, I had her as a main character, but then she was like, oh, I'm not in this book, and I was like, I just wrote the damn thing. Like, yeah, you are. Then you know what I mean? And then I'm like, just no.
I know exactly what you mean.
She goes, this girl's in this woman's in it, and then they like switch places, and then I had like a male and a female character that are kind of like in a story like adjacent, like they're together on like one of the POVs, and then but like they like flip flopped, and then that's what I said to my best friend. I was like, these son of a gun characters. I go, what do you think about this instead? Like these two? He goes, oh my God, and I go, I'm gonna change the setting to like a fantasy setting for like a instead of being like a desert setting, it's gonna be like an Eastern European like kind of thing. And he was like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "Think like 16th century." He's like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, "You two can stay," you know? Like,
Yeah.
they completely changed the entire thing. So I totally get it. Yeah, one of my characters, the one I'm writing right now, he like literally after I was like kind of working on him, and then once the Prime show came out for Reacher. I watched episode 1 and like in my head, my character is like, yeah, more like that guy, not you, more like him. And I'm like, dang, okay. And I don't know, just like, yeah, everything like kind of clicked into place. Then he was like explaining to me, you know, reasons why and stuff. So I totally get it. Yeah. My other writing friend, he's like, nope, my characters don't talk to me. I was like, must be nice because figure out what you want to do. I was like, it's like my family road trip. They're like, we're gonna stop here, right? I'm like, no. Yeah, I totally get it. But that's what I think is part of the fun, right? So
Yeah.
I know we're winding out on time here, but I love this question. This was given to me by a guest a while back. And they're like, you should I just asked this to a couple people. They wanted me to. I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask it. So what is one world or universe that you would love to write in if you were given the chance? Could be like anything.
Oh, that's a question. I've done stuff in the Warhammer 40k world.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fun in a this is absolutely insane sort of way, but it's kind of fun. I'd still quite like to write for Judge Dredd. I grew up on that. Yeah, my friend Anna Smith Sparks got a Judge Anderson novel coming out soon that I've just beat her head for. That's absolutely bobbins. It's so surreal, trippy, but it's cool. It's really, really cool. Other than that, I don't really do other people's worlds. Yeah, I've never quite. I know fanfic is a whole thing, but it's never really been a thing for me. No, I did Warhammer, but IP writing and writing in somebody else's world aren't entirely the same thing because everybody who's written for Warhammer is doing IP writing. Do you know what I mean? It's not the same as doing, say, I don't know, Malazan fanfic or something. That just doesn't appeal. And much as I respect Mr. Erickson, that's not something I'd want to do. So I don't know. I'm reading a series at the moment that I don't know if you've heard of or not. It's self-published sci-fi space opera epic. I'm on book 10 and I've got one more to go and a 12th coming out in September. It's by a guy called James Rassone. It's called Into the Republic.
I haven't heard that. I have to check that out.
No, it's the thing. I'm friends with him on Facebook, which is the only reason I know it exists. But it's very galaxy-spanning space opera, military sci-fi. But he was very senior military himself in his career. He was at
Oh, wow.
JSOC and EUCOM, and that man knows what he's talking about. And boy,
Yeah.
does it show!
Oh, that's awesome.
There's so many opportunities for spin-offs. When he was talking about doing a spin-off insurgency counterinsurgency series, and there's so many branch points because it's across everything. You know, you've got boots on the ground grunt infantry, you've got augmented Delta Force super soldiers, you've got the
That's
Navy,
cool.
you've got fighter pilots. There's anything you could spin off a sideline about, and it's like, if I could work with you one day, maybe.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
He's a cool guy. He's a really, really cool guy as well. I get on with him on Facebook,
Cool.
and yeah, he knows what he's doing. It's
Yeah,
the important thing.
that's cool. I have to check that out.
I
That sounds
can't
awesome.
read military sci-fi that isn't written by a veteran because it never works. But
Yeah, yeah.
there's another guy, Mike Mame. I don't know if you've read him. He wrote Planet Side, Space Side, Colony Side. He was a U.S. Army colonel. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I read
Oh,
one
lovely
there.
stuff as well. They're really, really. They're out from Harper Voyager, US. They're really, really good.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well worth a look.
That's awesome. So before we get done though, Peter, do you have any news, updates, current projects, anything like that you can share with us?
Well, no, not really. I don't think. Paid with Good Intentions is out on the 19th of June in the UK.
Mm.
What is happening with publication in the US is as much of a mystery to me as it is for everybody else at the moment. I have raised it with my agent, but I've no update to give you at the moment, I'm afraid.
Yeah, yeah.
It's coming out in hardcover. The paperback will follow probably 9-12 months later. There is an audiobook in production. I just signed
cool.
off on the narrator a few days ago, so obviously that's not going to make the 19th, but it is coming. And US wise, I don't really know, but I will update people when I find out. Other than that, it's going to depend what's next, and I don't really know at the minute. Might be more Rose Throne, might not. We'll see. But I'm actually working on to make you laugh. I'm actually working on a kid's book at the moment, which I'm mostly doing for my little granddaughter, but we'll see if that ever sees the light of day.
Yeah.
I suspect not, but that's for my little Piper. So yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome. That's super cool. Well, I'm looking forward to Paved with Good Intentions. Like I said, I got book 3 and 4. I'm gonna bust those out here next couple weeks. I got like about 2 more weeks left of real work for both of my school jobs, and then after that, kind of coasting. So I'm gonna be doing those on my lunch break here, and then hopefully get to the next book here in the summer. But that's really cool about the audiobook. So I didn't know that, so that's awesome. But I want to just remind our audience that you can find Peter's book and social links down in the description anywhere where you're watching or listening to this video. We just want to make sure that you guys don't forget where I actually just did some reviews last night. Don't forget you can also review all of your audiobooks as well, whether you're on Audible or another app. Helps everybody in that process. Peter mentioned a lot of different people, right, who help him in his process. So, doing those reviews doesn't just help him, helps everybody, involved in that project in those books. So please keep doing that. That's our ongoing theme for really this season and really just the show the last couple of years. So we really appreciate that. Peter, thank you so much. This has been great. Like I said, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, just about War of the Rose Throne and Thomas and the characters. So this has been really, really fun. Can't wait to do like a spoiler thing or something like that, when I'm done with all 4 books.
Once you finish the quartet, hit me up. We'll do this again, man.
Yeah. I had a couple of people that, said that they'd be down. So yeah, I'd love to, get a couple of them and the 4 of us or 5 of us chat and, you just get to shoot some spoiler, questions at you. I think that would just be really, really cool. So, and a really good learning experience for everybody. But other than that, Peter, good luck with Paved with Good Intentions. Tag me, email me, send me whatever, and, we'll get it to, out to everybody on all our social media pages and channels. But other than that, I hope you have a good rest of the day, my friend, or a good evening and night. But I look forward to chatting you in the future, okay?
Yeah, cheers, buddy. Speak to you later.
Buddy. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.